Hey everyone, great to be here. We are celebrating the Cloud Foundry World, the Cloud Foundry Summit European Union event. We're all at home clearly, but I'm just thinking about the events I've been to in Europe and Basel and The Hague, and they were just so much fun and so interesting, and seeing how this community has changed and adapted to new times is really a testament to the really the use of open source technologies. And so I want to introduce the guest today. We have RK, Principal Architect at Happiest Minds. Hey RK, how are you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Trust everybody is doing good and keeping yourself safe. Hi, so I am RK, and I am Principal Architect of Happiest Minds Technologies based out of Bangalore, India. So I am the Principal Architect of DBS unit, and I am working in Cloud Foundry Technologies for the last 5 years. And along with the Cloud Foundry Technologies, I am competent and working in digital transformation, microservices, Kubernetes, hyper automation, integration, service-oriented architecture for the last 16 years. So that's the introduction from my side.
What is Happiest Minds?
Yeah, so it's a broad digital, and mindful IT company, and it's a company that works on all the digital technologies, and it has 3 basic units. It is digital business service, IMS, and product engineering, services. So I am part of the, DBS unit, but I mainly work for all the digital transformation initiative over there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, moving on to our next guest, Greg Otto. Greg Otto is Executive Director of Cloud Services at Comcast. Greg, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Alex. And it's wonderful to be here. I'm happy to be part of the event. And I lead our application platform and developer experience teams at Comcast NBC Universal. The Sky family is now part of the Comcast family. So hopefully there's folks tuning in. And I've been involved in Cloud Foundry since 2013, and we have a quite sizable environment. And the whole COVID situation has certainly accelerated our digital transformation efforts, and we've been being able to rise to the occasion, and lots of folks are very connected, and we're happy to be able to provide those connections for our customers and all the media and entertainment capabilities that we're delivering.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Greg. And Lee Porte, Reliability Engineer for gov.uk on the Platform as a Service team. What does GDS stand for?
GDS, that's Government Digital Service.
Okay.
So over in the US, you've got the 18F.
Okay, yeah.
18F was modeled on GDS, so we were the first to do the how to transform government digital. So we were spun out as a shop to start figuring that out, and the first thing that we delivered was gov.uk itself. Prior to gov.uk, there were over 200 different government websites in existence that you may have to interact with. Afterwards, there was one place to find everything.
Yes, automation does have its miracle moments, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
So we're here to talk about Cloud Foundry and some of your experiences with Cloud Foundry as of late, because there's been some change afoot. There's been a lot of change, and I am quite excited about the change. Whenever I hear about something going lightweight, I get very excited. And it reminds me of the earliest days of Cloud Foundry, when there was a lot of excitement about its opportunities. I remember being in a conference room at VMware headquarters, circa 2010, maybe, or about around then. And they were like all excited about this new thing they call Cloud Foundry. And now we've moved into a new world where we're now hearing a lot more about lightweight services. And Cloud Foundry now has a number of lightweight services that are making it possible to really connect through the API and have much, I guess, and much less requirements on, for instance, the installation. And the services include Istio and FluentD and others as well. And build packs are really starting to have a higher profile. But a lot of this means change, and change is not easy. And so, Lee, I'd love to ask you about, what you're learning, because I know you've been doing some work in developing some COVID-related technologies, and perhaps you could talk a little bit about that and all this change and how's it going?
Yeah, so COVID's been a really interesting, challenging experience where having Cloud Foundry at our disposal has proved absolutely invaluable. So one of the really good cases in point is a service that we had to put together very quickly called the Shielded Vulnerable People Service. So as COVID was taking its hold, one of the things that the government came across, UK government, this is, said, if you have certain types of health conditions, you should be shielding away from everybody else. You should be in isolation. You shouldn't even be going out shopping. This created a really interesting problem for a lot of people. All of a sudden, you can't leave the house. How do you get some food? So we had to spin up this new service. The work started at 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. By Monday morning at 10 a.m., it was live and up and running.
Wow.
It was able to cope with a couple of million hits without any problem whatsoever. And that scaled up as the announcements went. We had no problems at all with availability. We were very secure in seeing, up to 30 million hits in an hour on that service.
So how did Cloud Foundry play a role in that?
Cloud Foundry did all the hosting side for us. It also tailed into one of our other services that we've got, gov.uk Notify, which sends emails, text messages, and letters to people. Notify is used by a lot of different government services. It's used by the NHS. They were seeing an awful lot of traffic, and at peak points, they were looking at 20 million messages per day, emails sent out. Notify is another one of our services that is hosted on the PaaS. They could scale up and down on demand according to how much workload was being passed through to them by their end users.
So when you hear this, Greg, and hear this story about Lee's experience, has it been that easy for you? Has it been an adaptation to think about this blended environment? Because I imagine, Lee, we didn't get to this, but I imagine there's a Kubernetes angle here too, but we can maybe come back to that, or maybe there's not. But Greg, there's a lot of kind of talk about how Kubernetes is great and all, but the plumbing is there, but getting up and getting started is another matter. And really the CF push environment really has been there for the devs, really. And that's been the focus on CF, is that dev experience. That's complicated. That's complicated a bit, I think, by Kubernetes. And, what have you learned through this? What are some of the experiences that you've brought to bear that you're still trying to figure out?
Yeah, great questions, Alex. So, we've learned quite a bit. Again, it's been about a 7-year journey for us. So I think when, you have the experience in scaling a platform, we're currently processing billions of business transactions daily on our platform. when you look at changes in the ecosystem, which are not new to Cloud Foundry, there's been, you know, changes to the runtime and a bunch of other changes. That's just been a, you know, part of the ecosystem. And like you, I'm very excited about those because I look forward to the simplification. So for me, it's really about a developer experience platform that now gets extended to these workloads that are better suited in a Kubernetes environment for stateful workloads, that, you know, now we get to be able to provide that CF push experience for the developers, making things easier for them, for even, you know, greater shares of workloads, and it just increases developer happiness, and that's essentially my product.
RK, I understand that you use a service, or do you host your own Cloud Foundry environment?
Yes. So as we mentioned that, you know, as part of Happiest Technologies, so we are building a platform. The platform name is DCM, which is the Digital Content Monetization. And this platform is serving basically, you know, content market research companies. So when we started the journey in the 2015, our idea was to create a multi-tenant SaaS platform using the microservices architecture. It's a completely microservices architecture, and we were really searching for, you know, such platform where we can build, deploy everything very easily. And eventually we came to IBM and found, you know, the Cloud Foundry, and what we realized that one single CF push, you know, can, you know, solve our problem, because rest of the things, all non-functional requirements of the architecture like scalability, high availability, recovery, everything will be automatically taken care by the platform. That was a great journey we started. And you imagine we started with your, you know, Dia and Diego, those kind of architectures.
Right.
And now, you know, we are seeing the Kubernetes, you know, that's playing a big role. And what is the advantage of the Kubernetes over the Cloud Foundry? So that's basically twofold, because the developer has a better control over here, what we didn't have, right? So that's the one part. And in the Cloud Foundry itself, that has another advantage, right? So if I need a microservice that will be called only once in a month, right? We need a very small amount of resource over there, maybe 256 MB of, you know, RAM. Even if today there is very less platform that will give, you know, 120 of 8 MB of RAM where you can run a production kills microservices. That's the amazing power. On the other hand, if you get the Kubernetes and if you push all your backend microservices and you put your UI and all your front-end apps in the Cloud Foundry, that's an amazing blend, because it gives you a, you know, completely, you know, dual advantage of both Cloud Foundry and the Kubernetes. So as the entire Cloud Foundry is moving to Kubernetes, I am a bit worried whether it should not lose that all your developer experience, you know, which we used to enjoy from the very first day. It should be there, you know, Alex, and along with that, it should be, you know, powered with all the Kubernetes facility. So we need the CF push. We don't want to, you know, lose the CF push, and we also want platform should do all the amazing activities that it's used to do, you know, from the day one. So that's my, you know, point that I want to, you know, give.
RK, so I'm curious then, has it changed the developer experience at all?
No, absolutely not. So what we did, you know, we changed the architecture, you know, of our platform, you know, because of the Kubernetes and the Cloud Foundry. But developer experience, you know, is great, and that's the main reason, you know, we are with the Cloud Foundry and the enterprise grade Cloud Foundry offered by the IBM, because we want our developer should only focus on the business logic, and they should not focus on the rest of the all management activities, right? So we need a, you know, a pretty good amount of balance, you know, between those. And we don't want to lose the developer experience, because we have in our platform, we are working with multiple technologies, and technologies are changing, you know, every day and every hour, you can say. And you know, we don't want to spend more time on managing the infrastructure and bringing the services up and integrating that. So that's the beauty of the Cloud Foundry. And, we are really fan of that. And we are one of the, great promoters and admirers of the Cloud Foundry from the India and region level. And Happiest Minds is really great fan of Cloud Foundry. And that we have received all the opportunities from, IBM, to work on that.
Well, thank you. Lee, you're shaking your head. I can see you through our recording here we're doing via Zoom, and you've been very much kind of in concert, I think, with what's being said here. And I didn't ask you about Kubernetes. And what's the blend there? What is and what, it may not pose a challenge for the devs because you're just trying to shield everything from the devs, but what challenges does it put on you when you're thinking about the architecture and you're making, so you can actually build a COVID app in a matter of 5 days or so?
So at the moment, our Cloud Foundry is Cloud Foundry on VMs.
Okay.
So we're still BOSH orientated at the moment. Okay. We have also had and still have in production a separate Kubernetes platform as well that isn't Cloud Foundry at all. That was spun up for some very unique circumstances. We're, really Cloud Foundry is our way in. The decision that we've got to make, and this is the bit that I'm wrangling with at the moment, is how do we get to Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes? So we've got hundreds and hundreds of users on our platform. We've got live applications all over. The CF Cube, Cube CF. That's one way of doing things. There's CF for K8s. That's the other way of doing things. Do we try and migrate our existing BOSH implementation over, or do we start afresh on a, vanilla Kubernetes platform and bring the Cloud Foundry experience to it that way? That developer experience is something that we can't compromise on at all with our user base. They absolutely love it. It's so simple. CF push, run my application. I don't have to consider anything else. And that is the real winning thing of Cloud Foundry. Bare metal Kubernetes, it gives developers a length of rope that they can tie themselves in knots with. You can't do that with Cloud Foundry, and that's where it really wins.
So why would you even consider Kubernetes?
Because from an operational perspective, it gives us a lot more flexibility. We can do more things with it that we can't do currently with BOSH. And the other thing is, it's definitely the direction that the foundation is going in, and we don't want to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. So Greg, have you moved over to Kubernetes?
Yeah, so we run most of our workloads in Cloud Foundry. We've started an effort this year actually moving our services over to Kubernetes. But again, from a developer perspective, that's invisible, right? So we're using Kubernetes for the service instances, and then we're using the traditional Cloud Foundry for all the application instances. And then, we are using other open source technology to provide a ubiquitous marketplace. Because again, we don't want the developers to have to care whether different workloads are running in Cloud Foundry or in Kubernetes, right? So, just like Lee and Arke have said, the developer experience is, sacred, and that, is the expectation that our devs have. So for us, we're already moving components over to Kubernetes that makes sense. And then once, we're ready to start to move some of the runtime components, we're definitely excited about the CF for K8s and a lot of the simplification. There's other components like you had mentioned around Istio. So we're working on a prototype for global ingress using Istio, which helps us, remove our HA proxy and Go router tier. So that's something that we're going to share and get feedback. We want to get feedback for with the community in our the next CAB call. So shameless plug for that. We're excited about it. So we definitely embrace the change, and we've been moving some of those things more slowly. So we don't look at it as a big bang and just, we're moving to Kubernetes for Kubernetes' sake. Exposing, the dumbest thing I think that we could do is just expose raw Kubernetes to the developers. That would be in stark contrast to, the platform experience they get with CF push. So we're excited to extend that CF push experience to Kubernetes.
And so how do you continue to protect them then? How, is that really then the desired state, to keep that developer experience pure? And how do you manage that, but also using kind of the full capability of the services that are available, so you can do better, for instance, observability across a distributed architecture, and use the other kind of capabilities that come with more immutable style environments?
Yeah, it's using the right tools for the right job at the moment. And, as different capabilities emerge, that the Cloud Foundry had to create initially, when it makes sense, the foundation and the community moves those components, out and, embraces the new components. And we take very much the same approach. So again, providing a ubiquitous marketplace that the developers don't have to care about. Our applications are distributed across, dozens of regions and availability zones and cloud providers. So making that, as simple and easy, for the developers using the tools that we have available.
RK, is this a challenge for you at all? Is there, is there a way that are there some warning signs that you're looking at? Are there some potential issues you're looking to circumvent?
So related with the Cloud Foundry and the Kubernetes, okay, I don't see any potential challenge, because Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry, functionally there is an overlap, but architecturally there is a change. They have their own objectives. They have their own, own target to fulfill, and they will continue to do. And the way the Cloud Foundry and the Kubernetes marriage is happening, so that part will be solved. But when the Cloud Foundry platform, when we bring to the enterprise, enterprise grade, and one of the challenge, that we'd like to highlight, probably everybody should work on that when the Cloud Foundry in one of the region goes down, right? So then we have to, route it. We have to route it to the other region. And then we have to believe, or we have to rely on some external global load balancer. If you see the, Kubernetes, in Kubernetes, we can do some of the multi-cluster deployment in the multi-region. So if we can bring, some of the functionalities here and do some marriage, so that we don't have to borrow a global load balancer from the outside vendor and make it compatible. It's a huge challenge. So if it can be boxed under the platform, and you just click, right? So you create a, Cloud Foundry, instance in Dallas, as well as you create in the UK region, and the external load balancer, which is tightly coupled with the entire ecosystem, will do the magic for you. The developer experience will be multifold. That I can guarantee. This is my experience for last 6 years working on the Cloud Foundry. And I'm sure that all the panels here, they will agree with me. So rest, all are amazing.
Totally agree. So RK, definitely want to make sure that you're going to attend and join us and collaborate on the global ingress that we're working on, because it helps solve some of the problems that you're describing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely we'll connect to you, and we'll just, get some of the inputs and see that how we can bring over here in our platform, in Happiest Minds and our DCM platform. Thanks, Greg, for great input. Yeah.
Yeah, Greg, I'm looking forward to using that as well.
See, and this is one of the things, Alex, I like about this community, right? The connecting people together and leveraging group IQ. So it's been a very open, welcoming, very warm community, very people focused, and so appreciate you getting this panel together, and we're already collaborating.
Yeah.
Well done, sir.
Thank you. So Lee, what's going on now? Why would you be looking forward to that discussion with Greg and RK? What's happening? Like, why do you need it?
Well, that's going to help simplify things for a lot of our developers. They're going to have to spend less time thinking about what happens if this region goes down. How am I going to be available all the time? Again, it's just increasing that Cloud Foundry, keep it simple for the developer, take the hard work away. They can focus on the thing that they're really good at, which is writing the code.
How do you manage it now? How do you manage it now?
At the moment, we have teams of people whose job it is to actually do all that architecture work. We can free them up. They can be a lot more creative with other things, solve those problems that are going to help our end users, i.e. citizens of the UK and people around the globe, their needs.
What's the creativity, for instance, Greg, that can come with a global ingress that you see as potential for your teams?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's like what Lee said. I mean, the way that we manage that now is we've created a global load balancing as a service, working with our friends on our network team. So it's a CF service create, very simple for the developers. But when you start to distribute your application over larger numbers of regions and so forth, this allows our team to benefit from the work being done in the Istio community, and then again it allows the development teams to have a much more control over traffic shaping their application than what they do now. So it's faster, cheaper, and better. So you get all three. So that's kind of why we're excited about it.
RK, when you think about your teams and the people who are on your teams, what if they start complaining about latency? What if they start complaining about throughput, for instance? And they start asking, well, what about this Istio thing? Isn't it just a tax? Isn't it just a tax on the network? And shouldn't we just be like doing something else? I mean, how do you work with the devs who might get cranky?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, because latency is a very generic problem that needs to be addressed by the architecture. I mean, nothing to do with the the specific platform itself. So, for example, as we mentioned, that our entire platform is based on the microservices architecture, and Cloud Foundry is all about the application code, right? So now the question is that if my user is hosted or accessing the platform from Oceania region, the microservices will be hosted over there. And not the microservices, the associated data will be also hosted over there. So I cannot tell my user, or through the global load balancer, they will reach to the Oceania region, they will access the application code, and for the data, they should go to the US. So latency will exist. So that problem should, we should solve the problem in the architecturally. The beauty will be the marriage of the Kubernetes platform and this Cloud Foundry should be that the service will put it into the application code will put it into the Cloud Foundry. And why don't we create a underlying Docker image of the service and can bind and put it into the same region? For example, you need a microservice that needs to operate on a MongoDB or Elasticsearch or some ML service. So entire thing needs to be packaged. So it needs, I mean, Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes can do that. So the Cloud Foundry, application, as well as the PostgreSQL Docker, that should reside in the Oceania region or US region. If a user calls the service or the application, it should be routed over there. So basically, it should be active load balancing. It will serve the two purpose. One is your failover. If one region is down, your user will not be impacted. And second one is the easy access reducing the performance, increasing the performance, and reducing the latency, so that a user on a specific region will be able to the service hosted over there. So that is the architecture pattern, architecture goal we have. We still do have some transition architectures are rolling out. The objective is that we have to reach to the target architecture state. And the way Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes marriage will help us in future, along with the global load balancer, availability of that, we'll be able to reach to the state very quickly. So that is the expectation from the community.
Okay, I'm going to be really interested if you can share a bit of insight around how you're doing your data, your backing data store reconciliation across when you're looking globally for local databases.
Yeah, so absolutely. So now the data is hosted in the US, right? So the Cloud Foundry apps are there. They're accessing the data of Compose, which is basically, now we are using the IBM platform. It is the ICD databases. So to do the microservices architecture, I cannot spawn multiple Compose PostgreSQL or multiple, MongoDB to serve 30, microservices. I have to create a one schema, and under one schema, we have to create independent tables to handle that, right? And if I bring the PostgreSQL instance, same instance in Oceania region, I have to write a pipe, or I have to go for a very costly service like Cosmos DB or something that will do all the replication automatically.
Yeah.
So if we have, the Kubernetes and the pipe can be developed, so that will be a great job. So I don't have to, handle the data replication also. So achieving a true microservices architecture with all the available technologies, what I personally believe, it is not 100% complete, right? So what Martin Fowler, viewed during the first day of the microservices introduction, that is yet to go. So we are compromising because of the technology. As soon as technologies will be available, we'll be able to, achieve the thing.
Gosh, it's a fascinating time in many ways. I mean, I won't even get into this, but I've been like researching SmartNICs lately and how they can be used for cryptographic operations and be used kind of as an offload mechanism. But Greg, I want to turn this back to you, and we've only got a few minutes left, but I could have this conversation all day with you on thinking through matters related to latency, to throughput. To peak capacity, which is going to happen. I mean, we're, these new services just don't like, there's not a zero cost here. There's a lot of new overhead that comes with it. Now, you maybe have fewer VMs that you need to use, for instance, but that might be then changed by the number of containers you're hosting, or with limitless possibilities comes eventual peaks. And so what's your outlook? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely encourage folks to use things like auto scaling. So instead of designing for peaks and then running at that, that's certainly not finance compliant. So, the auto scaling capabilities allows us to better utilize our infrastructure, and then a much higher distribution of applications, right? So instead of deploying, say, across 2 sites, right, where your blast radius is 50%, if any one site has a problem, it also limits your maximum utilization of the assets. So by moving to a more highly distributed architecture where, say, you're in 10 sites, running at 90% is then okay. So there's some things that we do, from that perspective, as well as allowing folks to overflow into the public cloud, because again, Cloud Foundry enables portable workloads that are agnostic. So running the right workload in the right environment at the right time with auto scaling and some of those, capabilities helps us. But, it's definitely a lot to, manage and keep track of. It's not trivial by any stretch, but things like auto scaling, and self-healing and highly distributed, architectures, along with, some data caching capabilities allows us, to be able to flex a little bit easier. And if there's any disruption, kind of insulate from any impacts. We recently had, big seasonal surge, right? So the NFL is a huge, viewership, and the NFL Red Zone. Our application platforms can definitely tell you the first commercial that happened, in the first game, because that's typically when a lot of folks start to order certain services. So those, whether they're seasonal or even nightly, peaks and valleys, those are definitely, tough times, and making sure that we're building more towards, the averages and auto scaling. Those are some of the things that can help us.
So we have just a few minutes left. So Lee, I'd like to ask you kind of a little, a summary of what you'd like to see from the community. And Global Ingress seems to be a project that you're interested in. And Greg was just mentioning some issues that they're facing, kind of the things that they're looking at. What are some of the things that you'd like to see from the community? What is some of the things that you need to build into your own infrastructure to prepare you for the shift that you're going to be making?
So for us, putting on my GDS hat, I'd like to see a convergence of the two different Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry work streams that are going on into one solid blessed project, because that's going to make making the decisions around which way to move forward an awful lot easier. But one of the areas that I'm finding really interesting and exciting at the moment is chaos engineering. Because distributed systems, architecting for failure is a key part of that. It's not something that anyone's really looked at in a huge way in the Cloud Foundry world. And the idea of a chaos engineering broker where you can set up different chaos engineering projects, model things in different ways, get your metrics back, so that you can continually improve your service to make sure that you're highly available and resilient, and you've covered all those bases, would be a really great thing to see.
RK, how about you? One of the things I've heard was actually James Governor was tweeting this about the idea of build packs, for instance, and their adaptability. But I'm just picking one thing out. And what are your thoughts, RK? What do you want to see from this community? What would you like to contribute to? What's pressing?
So the pressing need, from our organization and the platform is increasing the high availability. So because most of the time, all the professional services, they are taking the Cloud Foundry. They are giving a 99.95% availability. But now the most of the digital applications, they are looking very close to 100%. They are looking for availability, high availability of 100%. So there should be architecture, very easy and flexible architecture. They should hand over to the companies like Pivotal or IBM, so that they can very easily increase the high availability parameter. So, and I have talked to multiple senior architects of IBM, and this is a problem from their side also. They do not have any clue. So this is the only expectation from the community. They should hand over some robust architecture so that we can increase the high availability part.
A high availability issue. Is that a nod head from Greg and Lee as well? It is from Lee, I think. Greg is, I'm going to turn it back to you just to conclude, Greg. Is that is that a requirement for you, or are there other major requirements that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think, a lot of things said spot on. High availability, certainly the resiliency. Cloud Foundry does a really good job about tenant isolation. Kubernetes, I think has a little bit more to do there. So that in and of itself limits noisy neighbors when you have large shared environments. So that would be a key concern and focus to get out of the community for sure. Gosh,
this is such a fascinating time, isn't it? You guys must be having so much fun. I mean, my word, what an experience in your career to be able to work on projects like these, and to see CF make this change is wonderful. I mean, I'm missing Dublin, but I'm getting a lot out of these virtual events. I mean, what we're seeing coming out of the Cloud Foundry community with production ready Arini and Stratos and support for Kubernetes and Helm, and the influence of the new projects that we see out there, everything from Kubernetes to Istio to FluentD. It's a change, and it's a healthy one, and I love to see you all talking back and forth. I hope you all continue your conversation going forward. So just thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
All right, hello everyone. Hopefully we get some folks that pile in and ask really good questions. Good morning, Chip. All right, hopefully I did that right. I'm not getting audio though, so I don't know if that's something on my end or. Okay, so good morning, everyone. There were a couple of really good questions. We had a question about the global load balancing. Is this going to be open source on GitHub? It's not currently on GitHub at the moment, but that's definitely our intent, is to share this on an upcoming advisory board call and get feedback from the community, and then also open source and collaborate with the rest of the community on that. So that should be coming soon. And then there was another question, building on the global load balancing as a service, what are the top networking concerns that the Cloud Foundry platform teams have? Which of course is always a thought-provoking question from Dormeen. So there's lots of layers there. It's a great question. There's several. First, we want to make things easier for the development teams, simpler and easier traffic shaping, especially as they're distributing their apps across more sites. They need more robust automation, and you want to be able to have immediate convergence instead of using DNS, which is what our prior solution was using. In large enterprises, there's different DNS, TTL implementations and so forth, sometimes depending on the application, and that results in different convergence times and experiences. So we believe that this is a much better, simpler approach and much more robust in terms of being able to provide more control again to the development teams. Good questions. So a question was, Lee had made a comment about chaos engineering, and is that something that Comcast is doing? We had introduced this before as part of the staging process, just prior to production. Our development team did not welcome it with open arms. We felt, like this was an important part of shaking things out before we go and automating some of the wargaming, but we weren't ready at the time. So Lee's comments certainly helped inspire us to take another look at that, and that's something that I think that we're much more ready for now than we were in the past. And then there was a question on, has the new evolution of Cloud Foundry on K8s answered some of the concerns around footprint sizes with CF on VMs? I haven't found that to be a problem. So, just for comparison's sakes, roughly, we run about 100 workloads on a host in Cloud Foundry, and in our traditional kind of virtual machine environment, it's closer to 15, maybe 20 at best. So it's actually pretty efficient in terms of land mass and people served. It's a pretty efficient platform. In Kubernetes, there's a bunch of things to look at with respect to sidecars and other implementation details that but I think that whether the containers are as they are today, and the run C containers, or the Kubernetes runtime, I think both will be pretty efficient. And I'll type that answer now. Question about data caching. You mentioned data caching is part of how the team supports peaks, etc. How's that implemented? Is it up to developers? Do they need to learn new patterns or technologies to support it? And is it part of the marketplace that you described? So it's a great question. The development teams have been using the CF marketplace, and that's been a great implementation as part of our Cloud Foundry environment. And Redis has long been, one of those caching capabilities that is available in our marketplace. Again, we've moved our marketplace services to Kubernetes, like I described. And again, the service broker and CF service create experience is the same, so the developer really doesn't know. No, when you bind an application to Redis and you create an instance, and then you bind the services. The great thing about the platform is, and it's actually one of our demos that we do to help explain to folks, what is Cloud Foundry and how can it benefit you. You don't need to be a Redis expert. You don't have to go to some data services team. You can create an application, deploy it, and then search the marketplace and go shopping, so to speak. YAML's your shopping cart, and you can deploy caching capabilities. We traditionally offer things like Redis and Hazelcast, and then the developer is able to to deploy those services, bind them to their apps, and away they go. Very good questions. So there was a comment about wanting to hear more about chaos engineering and Cloud Foundry in reference to a talk that the T-Mobile team did in Philly last year about their project Monarch. Definitely Lee and others would benefit from going back and listening to that talk. The T-Mobile team continues to be an awesome partner and collaborator in the community. Know a number of those folks well, and they have a great team. They're doing great work, so you definitely want to check that out. And thanks to Dormain for highlighting that talk, because it was a really good talk. It looks like there's a fair number of people. So Dormain just asked a great question around how do we recruit for our team, and the answer is that a lot of times when we're recruiting, our positions get posted internally first, and a lot of the developers are very engaged with our team, and they get just as passionate about it as we do. So we've actually hired a number of developers that were previously part of the community that we supported, and then they joined our team to provide benefit to a broader development community than just their particular Scrum team. So that's been awesome for us, right? We see that as a great way to improve developer experience by actually hiring developers that were previous customers that can help us with the no BS feedback that helps us really improve. And that's a great it's been a great mechanism for us to be able to to focus on the developer experience, adopting the product and developer mindset through recruiting from our actual development team. All right. Well, always happy to answer questions. You all know where to find me for sure. And it was great to virtually be engaged with everyone. Definitely miss, this is the part that I miss, the hallway conversations and the community engagement, and seeing everyone. So, definitely missing everyone, but hopefully things will get back to normal soon, and we'll all be able to get back together again and in some conference, some format. All right, thank you so much.